I can say to my new Samsung Galaxy S25 Ultra, hey, find a keto-friendly restaurant nearby and text it to Beth and Steve. And it does, without me lifting a finger. So I can get in more squats anywhere I can. 1, 2, 3.
Will that be cash or credit?
Credit. 4.
Galaxy S25 Ultra, the AI companion that does the heavy lifting so you can do you. Get yours at Samsung.com. Compatible with select apps. Requires Google Gemini account. Results may vary based on input. Check responses for accuracy.
Today on CityCast Portland, we're talking about some of the community centers targeted for closure because of our city's ongoing budget deficit. We're also looking at why PGE was given the green light to further cut into Forest Park. Plus, we dive into our mailbag to hear from you, our listeners. And joining me on this midweek roundup is our very own executive producer, John Notarianni. It's Wednesday, March 19th. I'm Claudia Meza, and this is what Portland's talking about. Welcome, everyone, to our midweek microdose of news. John, thanks for joining me this morning.
Oh, good morning, Claudia.
Oh, I like that. I don't think you've ever given me such a warm good morning before.
Oh, I give you warm good mornings all the time.
Never. So if you're new...
Good morning, Claudia.
That's more like it. Okay, if you're new to the show, today is the day we look at a local story and or updates to stories that we might have missed last week or over the weekend. And today we're looking at Portland General Electric, or PGE, getting the go-ahead from the city to cut into Forest Park and build out some more transmission lines. But before we jump into that controversial ruling, John, you have some updates from the story you shared on our last midweek roundup a couple weeks back, right?
Yeah. 2 weeks ago, we were talking about a first look at potential cuts to the city budget. There's a giant $93 million budget deficit, and we'd heard from city administrator Michael Jordan with some sort of preliminary recommendations about what could be cut. Since then, a lot of people have been digging into some of these preliminary recommendation documents, as well as some packages that were put together by city service areas. And it seems like one thing jumped out front and center and caught a lot of attention, which is the potential closure of a community center. There's about $19 million that the Vibrant Communities Service Area, which contains Portland Parks and Rec, needs to make up. And in one of these documents, they listed 3 possibilities of community centers they'd consider closing: the St. John's Community Center, the Montevilla Community Center, and the Peninsula Park Community Center, which just erupted in rage on the internet over the past 2 weeks.
Yeah, and I remember I was telling you that St. John's neighbors of mine saw it coming. They were just like, because I guess it had trickled down to the people who work at the community centers, and they told the people around them, like, hey, we might be next. And the reason being is that, like you said, this was so convoluted and had to dig through so many different spreadsheets. But St. John's found their name.
I think it was page 54 in the document. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm concerned about that because I live maybe a block or so away from that park, specifically the St. John's Park. In the summer, John, every day that community center is being used as a daycare center, basically, as another extension for parents who are working to be able to drop their kids off and they get to go to work. So I'm imagining that they're worried.
Yeah.
That they're really kind of freaking out right now. What am I supposed to do with my children,
Totally. Yeah. I mean, I think, like we said, there's been a lot of noise about this on the internet and in in-person meetings. And District 2 counselors have started sort of responding. Dan Ryan told Coin, quote, "I'm hoping that we're going to fight to keep them open. At least I am." And also Samir Kanal was on the record saying, quote, "I share District 2 residents' concerns about a potential closure and will be fighting to preserve our community centers as budget talks progress." What I thought was really interesting was Steve Novick came around and said, quote, "At some point, some of us might have to step away and say, yeah, I think that the police need to stop responding to all the calls, or yup, we need to close community centers, or yup, we need to let any house that catches fire in Burlingame burn to the ground." So Novick is sort of coming through with hardline sober reasoning here, whereas some of these other counselors...
I don't know, man. I don't think anyone sober would be like, yeah, let's just let that house burn down. I know what you're saying, but let me just say I'm glad he's not my representative right now, because that here's the reason why I think District 2 reps are talking a big talk right now is 2 of those community centers are in North Portland.
Yeah.
It's very uneven how this is happening. It's 2 North Portland community centers that they're just like, you don't need anymore. So, yeah, I don't know, man.
Yeah, well, the last thing I want to get in on this is if you do have feelings about this, the city is hosting a number of budget hearings for the public that are coming up this week and next. On Thursday, District 1 is hosting one. Next Tuesday, the 1st, District 4. And then Thursday, April 3rd, District 2 is hosting a budget hearing session. So we'll have links to all that in our show notes if you want to go and check it out.
Cool. Well, thank you, John.
Yeah, no problem.
Now I'm going to jump over to my headline, which has been obviously burning a hole in my pocket because this has been reported for a couple weeks now.
Mm-hmm.
But I relied on reporting by OPB's April Ehrlich and Portland Mercury's Taylor Griggs. So if you haven't been following, PGE has been trying to get the city to greenlight their expansion into Forest Park for a while now. If you weren't aware, PGE has a substation in Linton, right on the Willamette, called the Harborton Substation. And that station already has transmission lines cutting through Forest Park. So it's not like they're going to be cutting, like virgin forest that has never been, no, they're already in there. They're calling this plan Harborton Reliability Project, and it just got approval to relocate an existing power pole, install 2 new power poles, and wire about 1,400 feet of transmission lines. All in all, it will involve cutting down about 400 trees, which is almost 5 acres of mature forest. Now, PGE says the expansion is necessary to support our area's growing power consumption, especially as we're moving away from fossil fuels. But opponents of the project worry this is just the start of PGE pushing even further into Forest Park.
Mm-hmm.
It's the if you give the mouse a cookie worry. And also that not enough thought was put into finding alternative solutions, and pointed out that in addition to the hundreds of mature trees that would need to get cut down, the expansion would also result in a permanent fill of 2 wetlands and impact 2 streams. That means trees, wetlands, streams that all support animal and plant life, including native shrubs, fish, frogs, birds, all that stuff. Also, PGE's plan had already been rejected by another bureau of the city back in January, the Portland Permitting and Development Office. They just named it that, by the way. It's the PP&D. They wrote a nearly 100-page report of hell no, just a handful of months ago. And this time around, the PP&D urged the city's hearing officer to also reject PGE's request. But Marisha Childs, the City of Portland land use hearing officer who was making the decision, found the city's analysis, that 100-page report, this is the quote now, confounding and inconsistent with local environmental and land use rules. Childs also argued that cutting into Forest Park is the best practicable, that's the word she used, by the way, and least environmentally detrimental option. In their plan, PGE said it would plant Oregon white oaks and other native shrubs in the place of these trees, and would leave some cut trees behind as a habitat for these insects and animals. Part of Child's decision would make PGE responsible for the ongoing survival of these new plantings. So they can't just plant stuff and be like, bye, you know what I mean? Like a few organizations at the city have done. So they also have to submit maintenance reports to the city that include a count of the number of plants that have died and photographs of the restoration area. So what I'm saying is, even with all that, there are still people that are very upset that the city is giving PGE the go-ahead.
Yeah. It's worth pointing out this is 5 acres in over 5,000 acres of forest park. Mm-hmm. So this is a very tiny chunk at the northern edge. But I do think it's an interesting concern of one of the reports mentioned that there is also another potential PGE project that could cut further into forest park at some point. And I think that Forest Park's really special. It's one of our jewels. It is one of the things that makes Portland super special. But at the same time, it's interesting. Childs wrote, "This land use case is about facts, not feelings," which sort of, along with Steve Novick, just sort of saying I'm just looking at the facts, ma'am, and making a sober decision about what needs to happen here.
Why would is this sobriety?
I said that just that way, just to grind it into you, Claudia.
What is it? Sober decision. No, it's funny that you quoted that, this land use case, however, is about facts and feelings, because Forest Park Conservancy, they're an organization that, of course, is centered around Forest Park and its well-being, actually emailed me an impact statement about this decision. So this is the executive director's statement, Scott Fogarty. He wrote, "Our stance remains that we believe PGE's proposal would violate the Forest Park Natural Resource Management Plan's requirement that the ecological degradation caused by this proposal may not be fully mitigable, and that PGE's lack of transparency during this process has been concerning." He goes on and basically goes off about the same thing, like, hey, this is just the first of 4 or 5 more phases, and we don't understand the full impact of those phases that are coming through. So again, also worried that more clearing is coming. And then he wrote, "These stances are grounded in our organization's legitimate concerns about this process, the project's potential impacts, and the long-term impacts on our region's sustainability, not our quote-unquote feelings."
Clapping back, yeah.
So yeah, they're not happy.
Well, I mean, this is going to be getting wrapped up pretty quick. The appeals need to be in by the 20th of March, which is this week. So we should have a final say on this one way or another, hopefully pretty soon.
Yeah. All right, well, let's take a quick break here. And when we return, we're digging into our mailbag. On March 28th, the Portland State University Center for Entrepreneurship is hosting their annual Clean Tech Challenge Finals. Now, that's PSU's premier invention competition, which gives student teams $1,000 in grant funding and then 10 weeks to develop innovative prototypes. And this year, they're also adding a brand new companion competition, the Everyday Entrepreneur, which opens up the opportunity to develop and pitch all other business ideas, no prototypes required. You can watch this all play out like our own local Shark Tank, where all 12 teams showcase their hard work and compete live for $3,000 in prizes. The winner of the Clean Tech Challenge is then invited to represent PSU at Oregon's only statewide collegiate invention competition, Invent Oregon, this June. The event is absolutely free, and cosplaying as your favorite invention of the last century is highly encouraged, no matter how many weird looks you're getting. To register, head to the link in our show notes.
This episode is sponsored by Babbel. Are you holding back on foreign travel plans this year because you're afraid of the language gap? I'm not, because I have Babbel. I'm David Plotz, the CEO of CityCast, and I'm learning Spanish on Babbel, getting ready for a trip to Mexico City. Babbel is the language learning app that gets you talking. Babbel's quick 10-minute lessons, handcrafted by over 200 language experts, get you to begin speaking your new language in 3 weeks or at whatever pace you choose. Babbel's tips and tools are inspired by the real-life stuff you actually need when communicating. With a focus on conversation, you'll be ready to talk wherever you go. Babbel has given me great lessons on getting directions, ordering in a restaurant, and making plans. And of all the things I'm doing in Mexico City, I'm probably most excited about the soccer game we're going to. So I was excited to learn how to cheer from Babbel. That'll be me you'll hear yelling, "Fuerza Tigres! Fuerza Tigres!" With over 16 million subscriptions sold, Babbel's 14 award-winning language courses are backed by a 20-day money-back guarantee. Let's get more of you talking in a new language. Babbel is gifting our listeners 60% off subscriptions at babbel.com/citycast. Get up to 60% off at babbel.com/citycast. Spelled BABBEL.com/citycast. Babbel.com/citycast. Rules and restrictions may apply.
We've been getting so much mail, John, since we're doing this mid-roundup like every other week. The mail just stacks up. So thank you to everyone who's writing in. And we wish we could read everyone's, but unfortunately we just do not have the time. But I wanted to read this because I just found this really exciting. So the subject is number one UK fan. And it starts off with, I just wanted to reach out and let you know that I am your number one fan from the UK after visiting my dad's side of the family 20 years ago. I've been lucky enough to visit nearly every other year, and Portland has truly become my second home. I listen to the podcast every lunch while on my walk, staying up to date on all things Portland, my favorite US city. The insights and stories you share always make me feel connected to the place, even from across the pond. Next time I'm in town, I'd love to get some of your recommendations on how to really experience downtown Portland in a truly local way. Keep up the amazing work and go Timbers. Cheers, Shaq.
Aww,
that's sweet.
That's really sweet.
I wanted to share that with all Portlanders because I feel like we can get down in our city.
And we are taking applications for other number one fans from different countries around the world. So
Exactly.
UK is now claimed, but the rest of the world is still up for grabs.
Croatia, where you at?
That could be you. Well, I've got a couple messages from people about spicy food. We recently on a mailbag segment had somebody reach out pleading for recommendations for places to get spicy food. And we got a few recommendations. This one's from Greg. I'm one of those people that asks for extra spicy every time, Greg says. Places that make you sweat. Thai Sky Kitchen on 60th and Division, tons hotter than other Thai places I've tried. Buffalo Wild Wings has blazing knockout sauce, an insanely spicy sauce made with multiple kinds of super hot peppers, way hotter than El Jefe at Fire on the Mountain. Baka Umai has Carolina Reaper, ghost pepper, or habanero ramen. Salvador Amali's has Great Balls of Fire, habanero poppers. Tasty Pot Hot Pot in Beaverton, lemongrass Thai. Folks say Mirisata Sri Lankan can make it super hot, but I've never found their high end to be super high. Their curry and rice plate is still one of the best meals in town. We also heard from Erica. Learned the hard way when I was young and ignorant and didn't know any better. Went into an Indian restaurant minutes before closing. I know. I don't do that anymore, Erica says. They really wanted us to eat from the buffet, but it was almost empty and reduced to dried out pan scrapings, so we declined and wanted to order from the menu. No. When they asked, we said we wanted it spicy, and boy, did we get what we asked for. It was revenge spicy, vindictive level spicy, I want to kill you type of spicy. In quotes, and yes, we deserved it. So, if you really want super spicy food, do what we did, piss off the whole staff, and reap the incendiary consequences of your bad behavior.
Wow.
I don't know that I co-signed that recommendation, but I imagine it could be effective. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny. Hey, you want to really spicy? Piss everybody off. Well, this next one is from Anonymous. We were asked to keep the name out. It's a reaction to our last Friday roundup when we were talking about Lake Oswego Lake going public. And they wanted to remind us that the people around that lake actually pay a fee, like either monthly or annually, to keep that lake clean. So they wrote, I guess my vote would be to open up the lake and remove the fees for the homeowners. That way it's a win-win. And I mean, like, if it's going to become a public lake, I guess the cost of cleaning it or whatever just go to the public, I would assume, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Maybe there is like a $3 day use fee or something like that. Honor system, throw it in a box. Like, sure. I think, if I were going for a paddle in Oswego Lake, I'd throw a couple bucks in to keep it clean. I think that we're all Portlanders. We're polite. We're conscientious. I think we can rely on the public to do that if they're given the option.
That's right.
Well, Claudia, this is from a conversation you had a few weeks ago with Norther Emily about urban foraging. This is from Andrew. He wrote, I just listened to your episode about urban foraging, and I want to share a slightly more involved foraging project my wife and I have been doing for about 10 years. English walnut trees are everywhere in Portland, so my wife and I harvest them in the spring, and when they're unripe, before the nut has a chance to harden, we then make nocino from them. Ooh. Nocino is a traditional Italian liqueur, but to prepare, the basic procedure is cut the washed whole walnut in half, put them in jars filled with the strongest neutral alcohol you can find. We usually use overproof vodka and let them sit out of the way for 6 months or so. After 6 months, you strain the liquid and then mix in simple syrup to taste. And then you still have to wait another 3 to 6 months or so for the taste to mellow out. Once it's mature, though, it's drinkable on its own or makes a good substitute for sweet vermouth in a cocktail. Claudia, I've also made nocino with my sister.
Really?
Yeah, this is like a Molly Notarianni specialty. There's like a very specific day, which is supposed to be the traditional nocino walnut harvesting day. Okay. I think it's in like June. And like, we've always made it with red wine. So it really is the sort of like winey, vermouthy thing. But
does it work? Like, does it taste good, I guess?
Yeah. I have some at my house. Next time you're over, let me know and I'll give you a pour.
Nice. All right. So this one is a reaction to a conversation you had, John.
Oh, the Portland Lou.
Yeah, it's a re-air of the Portland Lou episode. Subject, dysentery, Portland Lou, norovirus. They wrote, "Hello, I listened to the Portland Lou episode this morning after being at the coast for the first time this weekend. I was a little shocked to discover that the park restrooms only have hand sanitizer, which makes sense, but it is concerning because since I've learned that hand sanitizer doesn't work on norovirus." And then 3 emojis, one that looks like horrified, one that's crying, and then a skull.
Which is what norovirus feels like.
Yeah. They go on, "Since we've recently had an epidemic of norovirus, I'm wondering if the city has a plan to keep Portland Lou users safe, or is it just a BYOB situation, bring your own bleach? Also, hard-hitting journalism opportunity. Does hand sanitizer kill dysentery? I have no idea, and to be honest, it's never come up. I just Googled now, and believe it or not, there weren't many results. Supposedly, alcohol-based hand sanitizer does kill most of the dysentery, but most of the dysentery isn't all of the dysentery.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, and I will say we're actually going to be talking with Lillian Mongo Hughes from The Oregonian, who's done a bunch of that reporting on dysentery. That conversation is coming up in a few weeks, so I will follow up with her once we talk.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think? One more?
Yeah.
This is from the conversation that you had the other week with Jay Fluelling about Portlanders and their most toxic traits. The segment that got me to reveal way too many of my bad habits that I still regret saying to the public. This is a response from Katie and Raspberry. Saying, "I moved to Portland in July of 2024. My biggest pet peeve of Portlanders is 2 or more people walk shoulder to shoulder on sidewalks or on hiking paths and then not going single file when someone is approaching. The number of times I've had my dog walk behind me so that we take up as little space as possible as we pass and then yet still get run off the path in Washington and Forest Park is egregious. And it happens in my neighborhood in Southeast a lot too. Do other people notice this? Should I take up more space in this complicated dance? Or is there something about me and my dog that people want out of the way?"
Oh,
I'm going to say, Katie, it's not you. Do you see that, Claudia?
I do not.
Bad sidewalk etiquette?
I don't. I know. I mean, especially when I go hiking, I feel like everybody, when they see each other, they single file line.
See, I think if you're coming on face-to-face, single file happens. But if you're coming up from behind, there will be a clump that sort of crowds the path. So maybe Katie's just a really fast walker.
I don't know. I don't think this is Katie's fault.
Not trying to call you out, Katie. I feel for you.
Also, by the way, they sent a really cute picture of Raspberry, who is wearing sunglasses, and it's too bad you can't see it over the podcast. Katie was just like, me and Raspberry, come on. I mean, if I saw that dog wearing sunglasses, I would part the sea.
Not if they're coming up behind you.
Oh my God.
Okay, yeah.
John's email is John. Jesus.
Yeah, is claudia.meza@citycast.fm. It's weird, but that's my email. All right, the last one. This is from Linda. Short and sweet. People who use umbrellas are trying to protect their hair, makeup, and clothes that have to be dry cleaned. That's not us. That's my theory. Boom. Umbrellas debunked.
No, not at all. I rarely wear makeup or care about clothes that I don't have any dry clean clothes, and I still use umbrellas. You want to know why, Linda? Because I don't like to get wet. Why people use umbrellas? That lone trickle that like somehow finds its way on your back, that's the worst feeling.
Come on, Claudia. Admit it. You just like to look glamorous.
That's true. It's true. Just St. John's. Just walking around looking glamorous with my goddamn umbrella. Well, thank you, everyone who wrote in. Again, you can always email us at portland@citycast.fm. Yeah, we love being your podcast community board. So this is one of my favorite parts about the midweek roundup. So yeah, keep them coming.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
And thanks for hanging out with me, John.
Yeah, thanks, Claudia.
That's all for today here on CityCast Portland. Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed the show, please share it with a friend, rate or leave us a review. It really does help us out. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more from around the city. Until then, see you at Slim's.